Welcome to the Rattlebox Games podcast, a bi-weekly romp through the fertile fields of the world of tabletop games with your friends at Rattlebox Games. I'm Rob, and today I'm here with...
Brendan and...
Larn Steak Eye Stonefist. Marty.
On today's show, we're going to be talking about what we've played since the last time we recorded. We're going to talk about the state of Rattlebox Games 2017.
Woohoo!
And we're going to finish it out, as always, with non-game related recommendations. If you want to get in touch with us, as always, you can contact us at Rattlebox Games on Twitter. Or our email is podcast@rattleboxgames.com. All right, it is the dark of night, and we're here under its cover, recording. Lovely to have you with us, Marty.
Thank you for having me.
You might recognize Marty's beautiful voice if you are a listener to our sister podcast, The Matter of Drag.
I'm having a little bit of starstruck experience right now. It seems like both the DM and Lance Snake Eye Stonefist are here.
Larn.
Or that would be Larn.
Or
Whoa!
Larn.
First it was Marty, and then suddenly the voice. Yowza!
I'm impressed with the rapid costume change between those.
Which, shows really going the extra mile since this is not a visual medium.
I suspect he's always wearing a cloak.
Always.
I
made it myself.
Although, frankly, Marty, the codpiece is a little over the top.
Well,
it was originally supposed to be a helmet, but,
Besides being one of the on-air talent at Matter of Drag, Marty's also a third of the team at Rattlebox Games. So, Marty, tell the good people what you do at Rattlebox, I guess, is the question.
I am the illustrator.
Very
I do
good.
all of the artwork for the games. Not all, but
Yes.
most.
You're certainly the head of the art department.
Both at my full-time job and at Rattlebox.
There you go. What do you mean full-time job? Are you moonlighting on us?
I believe your contract said no competing work.
So Marty is, besides being a game designer and player in his own right, he is also our resident artist. Head over to Rattlebox Games and you'll see a bunch of his artwork over there.
Indeed.
Well, gentlemen, as always, we talk about first
What we've been playing.
what we've been playing, what board or sometimes role play, whatever. I guess, is it always non-digital? Whatever game we've been playing.
Yeah, well, what game have we been playing? This is a romp through the board games and card games.
True enough. Tabletop games, I think, is actually.
For sure.
So, role-playing games are welcome. So don't feel left out, Marty.
Oh, that's fine. I got something.
So, to establish how long our whole conversation about what we've been playing is going to last, we roll a d6. Actually, I'm going to invite Marty to roll it. There you go.
Alrighty, let's see.
4.
4 minutes.
A very respectable 4.
Mm-hmm.
I think last time I jumped down Brendan's throat. 30 seconds have passed. You be quiet.
Well, we only had 30 seconds.
He cried a little. All right. So are you setting the timer?
I got it ready to go.
Should we give Marty first crack?
Sure.
Okay. Do you know what you're going to talk about, Marty?
I know what I'm going to talk about, but how does this work, okay?
So
So the viewers at home know.
I set a timer for 4 minutes since you rolled a 4.
Okay.
And when that timer's over, we're done talking about
All of us.
All three of us together.
Oh,
are
okay.
done
So I
talking about
can't
games.
just keep...
Think of a minute 20
Talking.
seconds.
You get about a minute 20.
Okay. All right.
The rating part we do after time is over, though, so don't worry about trying to squeeze that in.
Alrighty.
Are you
Here
ready?
we go, and go.
So recently I started playing Batman Flux. So that was kind of fun. I played that over the weekend, and I've played some of the other versions of Flux. But Batman Flux was a little bit different because the creepers in that and the keepers, they all have additional things that they give to you.
Like bonuses?
Yeah. So say you've got Robin as one of your keepers, you have the ability to use him to take a creeper out of play and discard it. Because he's knocking out a supervillain or something like that.
Okay.
And all of the creepers, if there's a creeper out for anybody, it keeps anybody from winning unless the winning condition requires that creeper.
Okay.
As opposed to the normal versions of
So probably a Catwoman would be someone who you might need out.
Yeah, so if you had a
Someone
winning
who
condition
can
that
go
requires
both
the
ways.
Penguin and Batman, then you need the Penguin, who's one of the creepers, out, and you need the Batman as a keeper to win. But if that's not the winning condition, if the winning condition just asks for just like Batman and Robin or whatever, and somebody's got the Penguin out, nobody can win until the Penguin's gotten rid of. So
Cool.
All right.
Do you want to go next?
Sure.
All right.
I'd like to talk about 2 games that I've been playing lately. One of them is a game that my family picked up for Christmas, which we've tried a couple times now, called London Dread. It's a cooperative programming game where London is being menaced by various kinds of evil, and the game involves a big tableau of cards that are spread out over this sort of faux map of London. And then you start a timer. You get like 10 or 12 minutes. And as a group, you have to plan your path through the city. And once those 12 minutes are over, then kind of like Robo Rally or something, you reveal the path that you individually planned. And you see, did you get enough stuff resolved as you go through the city? It's pretty fun.
It's cooperative, though?
Yeah, you're working as a team. But since you only have 12 minutes, it's really hard to get everything done and have time to talk about it. So.
Fair enough.
that's interesting.
The other game, which I just got to try tonight, actually, while my daughter was swimming, I picked up the Arkham Horror LCG, which is sort of a new revamp of the old Lord of the Rings LCG.
Oh, okay. Fantasy Flight?
Yep.
Okay.
And my first playthrough of it was quite fun. I think I'm probably in for the long haul.
Excellent. Anything else? Because you have 6 generous seconds.
I really like that game.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about one game that I played since we last met, and a sister game to it that I played long ago. Those are both Doom, the board game. So I played Doom, the board game. We played a 5-player. It was my older brother and my 2 kids and his oldest.
Whoa.
And it went fairly well, I have to say. It was fun enough. He ran the monsters. We ran the Space Marines. The other version, which I guess is what Descent turned into.
Yeah, or came from.
Yeah. Well,
And then went
potato.
back. Yeah.
Was awful. It was unbalanced. There was no ammo, so you couldn't shoot anything. It took forever to play. This solved most or almost all of those issues. There is no ammo. It's weighted better. It's just more fun.
Yeah.
It was really a simulation of the video game, though. So I
Nice.
enjoyed it, and I was able to play it with the kids. I think my older brother pulled some punches. I don't think he played as hard as he could have, but
All right, that's it. Hopefully that was a satisfying and exciting recount of the games we've been playing.
there you go. Well, all that's left then is to rate on a scale of 1 to 20, our D20 scale, your feelings about these games. Why don't we start with Marty, since you let us out?
On a D20 scale, I'm going to give Batman Flux a 14 out of 20.
Ooh, high recommendation.
All right.
Is that high?
That's
I don't
I
know.
guess
I
that
think
would
so.
equate to a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's a 14 out of 20.
Oh, okay. We don't reduce fractions
No,
in this
no.
house? Okay.
For sure not.
Yeah, no, I think it could be better. I think the element of luck and chance in that game
Well,
is
you did say Flux.
yeah. I mean, it's fun sometimes. Other times it can be kind of frustrating.
All right.
But on the whole, I think there was more to it than the other games, and that's why I got 14 out of 20.
Nice.
All right.
I think London Dread, we've only played it twice. I'm going to give it a 13. No, 12. I'm going to give it a 12. It's pretty enjoyable, but there are an awful lot of mistakes in the rule book.
Ooh.
And like they actually missed one rule that if you didn't go look on Board Game Geek makes it unplayable, which is frustrating.
That's rough.
So that's why I'm giving it that. And we've only played one of the 4 adventures, so that may go up later. Arkham Horror LCG, I'm going to tentatively put it at a 14, so it's as good as Batman Flux, I guess would be the Rattlebox Games.
They could put that on the box.
Yeah, I think
Brennan says as good as Batman Flux.
I really like deck building as an activity in this game.
No. The
certainly-
devil, you say.
This game certainly promotes that as something you can do as the game goes along, so I suspect as they expand it, my interest in it will increase.
Fair enough. I actually am going to rate both Old Doom and New Doom. Old Doom, I'm going to go for an odd number because we are on a 20 scale. I'm going to go for 5.
Oh,
It does not get much love.
Sure.
I don't even know if we finished it that first time we played it. It was just
When you're talking about, did you play it recently, or you played it a long time
this was
ago?
back when it came
When
out.
it came out, okay. For a second, I thought maybe you played both to try them out.
No. I feel like this is bad. This is talking review out of the 4 minutes, but my understanding is some of the waiting issues were fixed by expansions, but that falls back into a previous episode where we talked about expansions, and it almost sounds like that game was released broken.
Right.
Yeah, you shouldn't need expansions to make your game playable.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a consensus. I went on Board Game Geek and I looked through the ratings for both games, and that seemed to be a consensus opinion.
So can I ask a question? Because you said in your review that he was based off of Descent. So the original was based... Oh, Descent was based off the original Doom?
Yes.
I thought Descent was older.
No.
The original Doom is real old.
2006, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the original Descent is from the 90s, isn't it?
No.
I thought it was.
No.
Okay, well, either which way, I mean...
Yeah. The new version...
What's that based off of? Anything?
No, it actually, some of the design team is shared, and I unfortunately did not write that down in my notes, who it was. There's at least one person in common on both projects.
From the old Doom and
Yes,
to the
exactly.
new Doom.
Okay.
Yeah, at least one designer carried through. But I'd say the new one, probably, I don't know, maybe a 15 after one play, first play with kids, potential that the person playing the bad guys wasn't playing as hard as he could.
Mm-hmm.
So room to move either way on that. But I would never play the old Doom again, and I would play this one again.
Okay, great.
That's excellent. I just realized that I had another game that I actually could have talked about, but
You'll
I
have
guess
to
I'll
come
save
back
it
on.
for next time.
All right. So I think we did that. I'd say those games are discussed and rated. Would you? Excellent. The next topic is the state of the Rattlebox.
Huzzah!
Well, it's a little bit frayed. We might need to replace it soon.
You shelf worn, is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Little foxing on the corners.
Yep.
It's not still in shrink wrap,
Right.
but I would say it's because it's gotten such frequent use and love.
Indeed.
Let's start by going through the games that are in the chute to be released.
Right. Now, are you thinking of the shoot at a butchery?
No, I'm thinking Starship Troopers.
Okay.
Oh, I was thinking like a laundry chute
Fair
or a
enough.
garbage chute.
Okay. I think the first game that we have to point to is Cromlech.
I'm
Rob's
literally
pointing to it.
pointing
Again,
at
we're
it.
making the most of this audio medium. So Cromlech is our dice and card battle game about druids wielding magic against one another.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game that we kickstarted in November 2015. Oh, that sounds so long
Those
ago.
halcyon days.
Yes. And we intended to deliver September of this year. It took a little longer than we wanted to, but we got it right. And we are at this point, just at this meeting right before we started recording, we looked over proofs of the cards. We were talking about the final order for the dice. We are, I'd say,
Presently.
we're getting ready to push go on the final component ordering, which means that we'll soon be having assembly parties and producing our boutique game, Cromlech.
It also means that soon you could buy yourself a copy of Cromlech. I'm sure that we'll mention that.
Huzzah!
Stay tuned.
That's right.
Another thing is, in the thing that I pointed to just now, we have all of the components. We could play a game of Cromlech with the same components that we're going to ship.
Indeed.
So that's exciting.
It's pretty impressive. I have to say, I'm containing it, but very excited about the fact that we have a game coming out.
No joke, man. Okay, so the next game in production, which we're pretty far down the road. We're actually kind of hoping this spring to go to Kickstarter with
Indeed.
In the Loop.
Now, so the production timeline on our games is really interesting because when we started Rattlebox Games in March or April of 2015,
Yeah, sounds right.
Rob and I each had a solid germ of a game.
Yeah. What we had, as I think maybe we've mentioned or maybe we haven't, we each had a game at prototype ready to playtest level.
Right. And
Developed independently without
Indeed.
consultation
And then that summer was a particularly fruitful time of sort of coming up with lots of ideas and sort of winnowing those down to playable ideas.
Totally.
And Cromlech was the product that seemed like the best first project for us to pursue. It was complex enough that it had lots of art assets needed, and it was going to require some manufacturing. So that ended up being our first Kickstarter. But the other games that we'll talk about today have all been in development almost as long or longer than Cromlech has.
Yes. Cromlech was literally conceived of as being the first game to release.
Right. Okay, so the next game that we're working on that, like Rob said, will hopefully go to Kickstarter in the spring. Although one of the limitations there is we aren't going to go to Kickstarter until we've delivered all of the backing from the previous one.
Yes, because we're not monsters.
That's right. So it's a game called In the Loop.
Mm-hmm. In the Loop, it's one that I actually thought up. Forgive us, folks, if we've already spoken about this in the past. I thought up In the Loop while we were headed back from our first game convention during the Kickstarter for Cromlech.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at a CTA train map as I rode the CTA. I thought that looks like a game, because at that moment everything looked like a game.
For those of you that don't know, the CTA is the Chicago Transit Authority.
Yes. Also the former name of the band Chicago until they were sued and made to change their name.
Oh, Peter Cetera.
There were a couple iterations and a couple of tweaks, but the gameplay that we have currently is pretty similar to what it started out with.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been refining the rules and the play.
We've taken it to a number of playtesting events, so we've had an awful lot of people try it. So the basic idea of In the Loop is that it's a card-laying puzzle game where each player represents a manager in the burgeoning days of the construction of the Chicago elevated train system.
Yep.
And in good Chicago tradition, you play a corrupt manager seeking to bend the public trough so that it's more easily fed out of by your corporate masters.
Is there any other type?
That's right. The way the game works, each player is going to have a secret company that they're working for, which would be one of the train lines, the different colors. And then as you play, you are placing cards that allow you to shape and maneuver the different train lines through the Chicago Loop with the goal of getting your train line as many stops and stations and segments as you can without revealing too obviously which train line you're working on, because as soon as the other players know which one is yours, they will destroy you.
Yes. So
I say that from experience.
It's just square cards and small rectangular cards. My usual description of the game is a hidden role puzzle game.
Okay.
It can play between 2 and 5 players.
Mm-hmm.
It usually takes about 45 minutes.
Yeah, 45 minutes for experienced players, a little longer.
Could be. Yeah,
If you're really trying to puzzle things out, it could slow down a little bit, but
yeah,
that's true with all interesting games.
True enough. I really liked the game. There's a simplicity to it that pleases me. One of the things that influenced the design of In the Loop was the fact that we were in the Cromlech Kickstarter. From a component perspective, Cromlech is a very complicated game, in so much as we had to establish relationships with companies in China to have the dice made.
Right. Because while we were going through the pre-production phase of Cromlech, we discovered you really can't have dice made in the United States.
Yes, it's incredible how few dice you can have made in the United States. Basically, if you aren't a casino, forget about it. China it was, and we actually found a great company. They've been a wonderful partner. Our friends at Wingo Games have treated us very well. But this game will be, I suspect, that In the Loop will be produced entirely in the United States.
Barring an enormous success on Kickstarter.
So probably produced in China. But yes, it has the capacity to be able to be produced in the United States because it is a box, a set of rules, and 2 decks of cards.
Yep.
In a good way. So I'm excited about that. And
guess we're targeting late April.
yeah, by the way, I popped into the folder, the archive folder for In the Loop. The first date I see is October 30th, 2015 for starting to make drawings for that.
Nice.
I guess that's where In the Loop stands, which brings us to Egg Merchants of Drag.
Wait, Drag? That sounds familiar.
What? Actually, Drag is the same world that Cromlech takes place in, and the same world that Laharn and Farmer Hay live in.
Laharn.
In the Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
So this begs the question: are we going to have a tower defense game, in which you play a bunch of orphans fighting off the Muidin? That's my question.
I don't see why not. You need to write that down. You just came up with an excellent idea.
I think we'll be calling it Kid Chomper.
Could we retheme? We do have a game. I call it Dice Siege. Could we retheme Dice Siege?
You could. It could come with little dice for the orphans, big dice for the Muidin. Egg Merchants of Drag is the next game after In the Loop that we are currently working on. And again, it's actually been in production longer than almost any of the games, because that's the game that Rob brought when he said, hey, what do you say we play my game?
Yeah.
And you know what? I think the name actually essentially speaks for itself.
Yes, well, that is actually a piece of advice that we got. What was the first? Kingdom of Drag was the first title that we used, but some good soul who gave us some feedback said that due to the way that the game's played, that's almost misleading.
Right. If you haven't played the game yet, if you haven't joined us at one of the awesome playtesting events, the Egg Merchants of Drag, thematically, you play young merchants trying to make your way in the big city, making your money, selling dragon eggs. Mm-hmm. So I think what I recall from our various conversations with people about the name of the game is that when we had dragon in the title, Dragon Egg Merchants or something to that effect, people expect you to get to do stuff with dragons in the game.
Yeah.
And you don't really get to do stuff with dragons.
Not as such.
I think, for me anyway, that was part of the reason we took dragon out of the title.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, how do we describe that one? It is a
market manipulation role selection game.
And worker placement?
Yeah, there's yes, all of that. It is a game with a lot of interaction, and as we said, you're trying to sell dragon eggs, and there are a group of buyers, and you are the group of sellers. You've got your sort of machine built, your workers who collect the eggs and the various components needed to collect them.
I think the place where you built some really unique mechanisms are in the role selection section of the game and in the auction. Yeah. That a lot of Euro games, the part where you're placing workers and sort of manipulating the market, or gathering your resources and choosing what to buy, that part is important to the gameplay, but is not, when I'm explaining it to playtesters, that's not usually where I say the meat of the game is. No. There's a early segment in each round where, as a merchant, you exert your influence on the market and you press the market to act in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And that comes through in the game by raising the value of one particular commodity or limiting the availability of another or doing various things like that. Some of them pretty nasty.
Yeah.
And there's a whole mechanism in there by the person who picks first kind of gets theirs to resolve before others. And
when you're exerting your force, you're not sure how it's going to pan out because what other people do influences the result of your decision in a way that, I'm pretty pleased with that. And it definitely is a fun part of the game.
It's certainly the most tense. That moment right before you reveal which card you picked and see what other people picked. And especially if you're walking the danger line, you're one of the cards that has a little more risk to it.
And then you're right. The other part where it probably shines is at the end of the cycle. There's the ability to try to influence who you're going to be selling to in a way that's optimal. And you can bid, and sometimes people will try to get a worse bid than your bad bid. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes they'll try to get a better bid than your good bid.
A better bad bid?
That's right. 2 to 4 players. Although I think 2 to 4 players now. We might add a 5th player. I don't think that there's anything about the game that keeps a 5th player from coming in.
The current board design would.
Nope.
I guess you're right. We normally sit on one side of the board, but nothing that requires that.
Yes.
Fair enough.
So I think that we might see maybe that'll be a stretch goal.
Hey.
And how long does that one take? About 90.
Yeah, again, 90 minutes. Most of the times that I've played, though, I've played with at least 1 or 2 people who are new.
Yeah.
I mean, when we play together, it goes much faster.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, and that's one of the tricks about figuring out how long it takes to play a game is the fact that at this stage, you're always playing with new players unless you're playing with the designers for the most part.
And when the designers are playing, they take a quarter of the time that it says on the box.
Yeah. Although my kids are pretty good.
So, Marty, as you think about working toward production of Egg Merchants of Dreg, what are some of the art challenges or things you're looking forward to working on in the visual components of the game?
Actually looking forward to repainting the board. Actually, I mean, I really like how it's been set up so far, and now it's just kind of like, okay, let's repaint that so we can kind of really bring out the details and then kind of polish it off.
I, Rob, the designer, have taken the board through several iterations. The current one that Marty's talking about is an overhead view of the mountain where the dragons roost and the districts around it that produce various goods that are needed to run an efficient egg collection and sale business. And there's sort of little cartoony things going on in this overhead view, which I'll be excited to see how you choose to implement those.
And then another thing I'm excited about is actually designing faces for the meeple.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite parts of this.
So the game will come with 32 for a 4-player game or 40 for a 5-player game. Workers, meeples. And when I made them, they were actually made out of tiny little clothes pins that I cut the pinching arms off.
Yep.
And then I painted the colors of the 4 players components and put little faces on, and people reacted in such a strong, positive way to those.
They had such personality.
That we have to bring that forward. So we're definitely going to be doing that. Actually, who was it at one of the playtest events we took it to who really liked that?
James Matthew of Minion Games.
You know.
Who I frankly didn't have the guts to say, hi, I admire your blog. And he stopped by and looked at our games like, hey, those are great meeples. I mean, he looked at the game.
He even called over to say, he's like, hey, Bob, come over here and look at these meeples.
Yeah. So
you know.
Hi, James.
That felt good. Yeah, I'm excited about that. And Egg Merchants of Drag is actually something I think we're thinking of setting our most aggressive goal for success on Kickstarter on that game.
Right, because with Cromlech and I believe the plan for In the Loop, both, is the idea we're a boutique publisher, so our goal on Kickstarter is sort of the minimum we need to do a small run so that we have some to sell at cons.
Yeah.
But the minimum amount you need to produce a game in China and really have the game be economically feasible for things like distribution is a level up from where we've been so far. But I think
we're talking in the 1,000 to 2,000 unit range.
Right, which means that on the terms of board game Kickstarters, that's relatively modest to go for, say, and I'm ballparking here, we haven't run the numbers, but say $25,000. Yeah. That's a relatively modest goal for a Kickstarter board game. But once Cromlech, when it delivers, we can demonstrate the fun, the quality of our art, the quality of our components. Obviously, we missed on the timeline a bit. Yeah. I'm hoping that within the loop we could demonstrate we can hold to a timeline, and we've learned our lessons from the previous one.
One thing that won't happen is we won't go to Kickstarter with a game whose art is not principally done, to the extent where all that's left to do is if there's any reward levels that are linked to adding art, those will have to wait.
Right.
Definitionally. But otherwise, our games will be done, which Cromlech was less done than it probably should have been when we went to Kickstarter, but we were so excited.
Well, and I had just joined the project, too. I think only, a week or two before we went to Kickstarter anyway.
Yeah, and we had some really unexpected things happen.
Right. The lesson is not we'll keep unexpected things from happening, but rather finish the things that those might interrupt before we get to the point where we have people waiting on us.
I guess those are the 3 games that we've talked about.
Right, and that for those of you kind of keeping pace, that sort of sets us up through the end of this calendar year. We had a meeting a few weeks ago where we talked about sort of our goals for this coming year, and we were an ideal goal for us. It would be nice to sit down in an early episode of this podcast next year and be able to talk about how we kickstarted and delivered 2 games.
Yeah, well, we'll do a State of the Rattlebox 2018 next year.
Right.
And we'll also hopefully be talking about the next 2 projects that we're going to be going to press with one way or another for next year at that point.
Indeed.
One of which is probably the other game that we've mentioned obliquely about 15 times.
Right.
It's the game Brendan came to the table with, which is...
Yeah, it's called Something Wakes in the Forest. It's a horror-themed game of kind of area control, really, based around the idea of being a demon in the forest trying to corrupt campers. Part of the reason it's been sort of fairly late in our idea about doing this is that it has the most stuff in it.
Definitely.
As the way I built the game, it's got dozens of cards and tokens out the wazoo, and
but each one of those is unique.
Right. Yeah. It's not. It is not by any measure a small project, and perhaps it would need to be scaled. Who knows? Who knows? But it's far enough out that when we decide to go forward with it, we have plenty of time to get things ready. I will say hello to our friends over at the Talk About Board Games podcast, where Nicole, one of the co-hosts of that podcast, mentioned Something Wakes in the Forest as a game she was looking forward to in 2017.
Wow.
Then I had to post on the forum that I was sad to say it probably wouldn't even be Kickstarted till 2018. And then on the next episode of the podcast, she went, "Dang it!" So,
Nice.
so hi, Nicole, and I'm working on it.
We are. We actually before the holidays, but pretty recently we got a couple play tests in, and we're poking around some ideas of how to tweak things to optimize.
Indeed.
The other thing, it's as any good boutique board game production and design studio will do. We, of course, have built a podcast network. It's the logical, next step. So we currently have the 3 podcasts, and we're flirting with a 4th. Although the 4th, these tend to be every other week. That one would probably be once a month. But yes, we've got the Matter of Drag, which we've got Marty in from.
And as the person who's not participating in the creation of that and just a member of the audience, you guys are doing a great job.
Oh,
Thank
thanks.
you very much.
So those of you who are listening out there, if the Rattlebox Games podcast is the one you're listening to, you should be listening to Matter of Drag. It is very entertaining, even if you're not interested in going and playing Dungeons and Dragons.
My recommendation, Marty's in my recommendation. I happen to know that he backs me up on this idea.
I do.
Start at the 2nd episode, which is we call episode 1. Episode 0, listen to about the first 7 minutes, unless you really want to know what's involved in character creation in a game of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. We take you right through the weeds with us, but then we start right in on adventure.
Oh, lots of good voice work on that. I will say, as much as I like you guys, Bernard wins.
Oh,
for the
hands
coolest
down.
voice. His voice is great.
Ben's voice for Bernard is just great. And every time I hear it, I'm like, oh, man, I hate my voice so much. Because I hear his, and it's just like, there's just so much character there. And mine, I'm just kind of like, it's just me making my voice scratchy and kind of low. I could have done something else.
I will say, I also appreciate the very emo way which Mario approaches his character.
Yes.
Raven
Broodwing.
Yes. So that is great fun. And then to give Brendan his due, if you have any interest at all, or if you're a player of Netrunner, the card game, I know that there's sort of a whole franchise of Netrunner games. Yes.
Well, Android is the
Yes,
universe.
I'm sorry.
Android is Fantasy Flight's Drag.
There you go. Nice.
See, all this time I thought you had a podcast about Netflix. And I was like, man, I got to get on that. He's probably got some good shows.
But
I assemble some great lists, man.
But the name of Brendan's show is Install from Heap. And it's usually about 20 minutes. It's every other Friday. And it's a fun, it's sort of, Brendan doesn't have a strategy in this game that is what is the absolute optimal path to victory with the available assets that I have. It's more of this sounds like it would be fun, or, they've got this group of cards that theoretically, if you did this thing with, you could maybe have an interesting effect, and you'd lose or you'd win, but...
Yeah, it seems like the niche where I'm finding people recognizing my show as interesting for them is, one, it's short. It's like 20 minutes, which... Once you get into Netrunner, almost all the podcasts are 90 minutes or 2 hours. That's
longer than a game of Netrunner.
Yeah, really. It's hey, you
can play. I'm just saying Netrunner doesn't
4
take
games of
forever to play.
Netrunner probably.
Yeah.
But also that most people who are at the level where they're doing podcasting on Netrunner are playing like what you're talking about, optimal. They're talking about optimal decks. They're using lots of jargon to talk about combinations of cards that will win you tournaments. And like you said, I'm like, hey, this card seems funny. How can I build a deck around this? Or as a little preview for listeners, on the next episode, I'm going to be talking about my How I Met Your Mother themed deck because they just released a card called Stinson. They basically took Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother and put him in Netrunner as a card. But they put that card in there. So I was thinking, what other cards might we point to that remind us of How I Met Your Mother, and how can I make a legal deck that you could play? Don't get me wrong, it's a terrible deck. If I'm not even sure I want to try it, but if I do, it's just gonna crash and burn because it.
Brendan's in the enviable position of having an avid Android Netrunner player in his house. In the form of, I'm sure your daughter would be willing to kick your butt in a game of How I Met Your Netrunner.
That's right. Yeah,
How I Met.
So definitely give that a try. Actually, I'll say that my daughter is about 12 years old. She enjoys your podcast, and she's never played a game of Netrunner. She wants to play with your daughter, but has not yet. She said, Avery's always talking about it. I want to try it out. So,
excellent.
I think maybe the last thing to say, if you're talking about the state of the Rattlebox, which we are, although we keep diverting ourselves, we're sort of a slightly rambling version of that conversation. I think when we started out, it was just, we had a Tuesday night board game group. And one week I was going to ask at the end if we could play my game, whatever. The one that turned into Egg Merchants of Drag. But before I could say that at the end of the night, Brendan asked if we could play his game, Something Wakes in the Forest. So we played that the next night, or the next week, and then we played mine the week after. And after we played what has become Egg Merchants of Drag, Brendan was just like, so does anyone want to start a board game company? We've got two, many hands make light work. So it started out the three of us. And then shortly after, we brought Marty in as the fourth.
And to be fully fair about this, I had spent an awful lot of time in the last couple months on that game at that point. And my wife, God bless her, said, so this is going to be another one of those things where you burn up a whole bunch of time and then don't do anything with it.
Oh,
I was like, no, it's not. I'm going to do something.
Not now that you said that. So it ended up, the people interested were Brendan, myself, and Angela, who is
a phenomenal artist.
Well, definitely that. Yeah, is the lead artist on Cromlech. She's an incredible artist. Anyway, she's got a great style. She actually works in several styles. But just the demands of her life have made it such that she can't keep working with us here at Rattlebox. It was a sad but totally understandable piece of news when that came across. So yes, Angela had to leave us, and so now it's us three.
Yes.
So that's probably the biggest piece of news, sort of about the meta news about Rattlebox. So we'll miss Angela, although I sure hope.
Well, we'll still see her.
I was going to say
Rattlebox will miss her.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
We'll miss her too, but we get to see her.
Exactly. I wonder if we don't see more of her because she won't have Rattlebox stuff to do. But I would say we're all committed. We should be committed. See what I did there.
You make it sound like it's driving us crazy.
So that's where we are. And, we're going to keep making podcasts. We're going to keep making games. And we're going to keep making new contacts. And hopefully you'll be one of those. But the last thing that we're going to make today is recommendations.
Recommendations.
That's how we always end. Last time, this is where we did the D4 last time. Do we want to try a D4 again?
Yeah, that minute was really tight.
All of them
they all could roll a minute.
They all have ones, all of the dice I have here. What die should we roll? I've got a full set of polyhedral dice here.
Well, there are three of us. I think the D4 is a little slim.
Okay.
The D6 would be a nice set
D6.
of options.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here they come. Oh, 5.
Nice.
That's a
time.
Generous amount of time.
All right.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Recommend.
All right. I'm going to make a recommendation for a way for you to spend another hour of your life. That's my friend of the show, friend of Rattlebox Games, friend to all board gamers, Scott Bogan, has had for some time now a podcast called The Board Game Show.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say you should go over to his website and you should check out his podcast. He is definitely on iTunes. And I've enjoyed listening to it. I've actually, I've been on it. And Scott is someone who spends a lot of time and energy and thought on board games in a way that, so do we.
Yeah.
But we're also creating games. And he is, I think he's got a couple ideas, a couple irons in the fire, but he's not working in the salt mines. So he's really thinking in a way that I enjoy listening to about board games. And he actually recently took on a co-pilot for sort of, there was a little break between seasons, as it were. I can definitely tell you that there is a certain amount of effort that's involved in making a podcast, and having someone to share even just the on-air load with you on a regular basis is a boon, and it definitely brings something else to the conversations. So yeah, I think you should go over and give Keith and Scott a listen. You'll enjoy it. And hopefully we'll be back on there soon so you can hear us there too. It's my goal to get Brendan and Scott at the game table together.
That would be really fun.
Yeah. So does anyone else have a recommendation?
I've got one. So this is for an audio book, or for, I guess, a paperback book or hardcover book, whatever suits your fancy. But check out the book, The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. If you're into sci-fi and time travel and stuff like that, it's basically a time travel book, but it's almost, I don't know, it's got a different kind of flavor to it. I'm trying to think of how to describe it. Essentially, it's about a guy that lives his entire life and he dies, and then he wakes up at the point of birth, and over the first 5 years of his life starts to remember his past life, but he's living the same life over again.
Yeah.
And he keeps doing this, and so then he'll make different choices, but then when he dies, he goes back to the start again. And so then he starts to encounter other people that are like him, and
so Groundhog's Life?
Kind of, yeah, but it's interesting because the other people will communicate back through time with others that they know are like that. They've got kind of a secret society set up, and I thought it was an excellent book. The first half of it seems kind of slow. There's a lot of exposition, but you get about halfway through, and then the thriller part of it starts, and then you can't put it down.
Nice.
And it's amazing. So yeah, First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North.
Excellent.
Sounds a lot. There's another book called Replay. I can't remember the author name, but very similar.
I've heard of that
premise.
one too, yeah.
It's a decade older. Well, I have a quick recommendation to make.
That's good because we shortchanged you. Go.
This weekend, I took a trip to Indianapolis for a swim meet with my daughter, and two interesting things happened. First, through a snafu in the hotel arrangements, I ended up accidentally booking us at a long stay hotel.
Oh.
Like they were underbooked, so they were renting it out like a regular room. So we basically had an apartment for $100.
Wow.
It was fantastic. We each had our own room. There was a living room, which meant when I woke up early, then I didn't have to wake her up. It was great. So if you get a chance to stumble into a long-term stay hotel for your short-term stay, excellent. The only thing is there's not quite as many amenities, like I can't even think of, like, less likely to have like a folder of places you could order pizza from, that sort of thing.
But you probably weren't worried about having a pool.
It was the Park Place in City Center.
Okay.
And then on our way out of town, we stopped at Game Time, which is in the northern end of that sort of loop of freeways around Indianapolis.
The Dave Letterman bypass, go on.
Right. Fantastic store.
Oh.
I would highly recommend, if you have a chance to stop into Game Time. Very friendly folks. Well worth a visit.
Excellent. Well, thanks. That's super.
And 1 second to spare.
Oh, there it goes. And I guess not only there it goes, but there we go. We've probably bent your ear a little longer than we usually do, but you got us on our favorite topic, which is us. So I
thought you were going to say board games. No.
It's
Always us.
Thanks for joining us for the Narcissism Hour.
Yes. Thanks for joining us. One thing that we always forget to do until the last minute is talk about what the subject for next week is going to be.
There you go. You should talk about games you've bought that you haven't had a chance to play.
Ooh, the Shelf of Shame.
Yeah.
Or actually, I renamed my Shelf of Shame sometime last year as the Shelf of Opportunity.
All right, sold. That's what it is. And then I guess really what's left to say besides goodbye, which we'll hold off until the end.
Creepy whisper.
Yes, always. Would be, no, it's for our friends who have ASMR whisper. Don't forget that you can reach out to us. We're at Rattlebox Games on Twitter.
Games.
We're actually on Reddit too. If you look around for us, you'll find us.
Mm-hmm.
We might start a subreddit. Let us know if you think that's a good idea or a bad idea. And our email, as I mentioned earlier, but we'll mention again, is podcast@Rattlebox Games. If you can't find that in your memory, you can always look at rattleboxgames.com, which is where our web presence is located.
That's where we also put the show notes for this show and our other podcasts.
We do, indeed. Maybe we'll get a nice picture of Cromlech, its components up there. Who knows?
That's kind of high pressure, Rob.
All right.
Kidding. I'm going to do that
I
anyway.
mean, who
so.
owns a camera nowadays?
Yeah,
I think that's probably about it, right, boys?
indeed.
Thanks
Yep.
again to Marty for stopping in. You're always welcome. You know where we live.
Oh, definitely.
Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing all of you in your ear holes when we come out next time and talk about the Shelf of Shame. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The Matter of Dry Dungeons and Dragons podcast recounts the adventures and misadventures of 3 reasonably brave and fairly heroic friends through the fantastic mystical kingdom of Drag. Tune in every other week to follow Raven the Cleric, Bernard the Warlock, Lorne the Rogue, and Rob the Dungeon Master as they stumble toward greatness. Huzzah! Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.
Waka, waka, waka. Waka, waka, waka.
You're listening to the Rattlebox Games podcast. Yay!
In the background of the episode of Install from Heap that has Avery on it, in the background you can hear Loki walking by on our hardwood floor. This clickety 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 clickety.
That is the coolest looking cat by far. Your cat, right?
My dog.
Oh,
That's his
what's
dog.
your
My
cat's
dog.
name?
Hermes.
Oh, okay. You said Loki, and I was thinking of Hermes. I'm sorry.
He's got some low-key herpes. I think that's what I heard him say. That's all I heard. All right.
Heyo. Didn't know we were getting personal here.